All right, fantastic. We are going to go ahead and jump in. Great. I am Sasha Thackaberry-Voinovich, and myself, along with two amazing co-founders, have started New State University, and we are an AI-founded, AI-focused university. And then immediately following that, everyone asks, what does that mean? That means that we are built on an AI-first tech stack. So we have very different operations than most institutions. And then secondarily, we teach AI, and we teach applied AI. So what we don't do is teach computer science. There are a lot of great programs out there for computer science. What we do is applied AI in the fields of customer experience, product management, project management, finance, leadership, all the good things. And what we've discovered over time is there has been a lot of interest in how did you stand this business up? How did you stand it up so fast? And how are you running it in a lean manner? And so that's what this is. We're teaching you a little bit today about what I would call like the slice between prompt engineering and really fully leveraging context engineering. We're kind of going to go through all of those things. Run of show today is we're going to take about the first 45 minutes or so in content. There is a lot of content, so we will be sending this again, recording out, and along with those files. So you'll have all of that, and then we're going to leave about 10 to 15 minutes for questions. Charlotte Benkaz, if you wouldn't mind waving, Charlotte is going to be monitoring the chat. So please put any questions in there. And Charlotte is also going to be aggressively interrupting me if there are any questions that need to be answered as we go through. Thank you again. And we're just going to jump right in. All right, so this is what we're covering today. We're going to start with just some basic definitions. This can be helpful just to level set where we are and common terminology as we move forward. We're going to talk about context files, what they are, why you should use them, and of course, we're going to get our first pack of our first 5 context files. And then we are literally going to walk you through how to set up your first context files in each of these 4 major models. So we're doing ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and Claude today. I have videoed those in advance because if I had all of those things up concurrently, my computer would be slowed to a crawl and you would not be able to see any of this. And those will also be distributed, so you'll have those as well. All right, jumping in. So from a definition perspective, these components all interact with each other. And so how we think about it here at New State U is like your personal AI tech stack of one. So your own professional agent, sort of you as agent, and then how you set up agents to work on your personal tech stack, right? It doesn't have to be just you. You can do this with teams, you can do this with entire organizations, but the structure is philosophically similar, right? So prompt engineering, you all are probably familiar with this. What it looked like 2 years ago is very different than today. You still actually have to have a methodology around prompt engineering, though the models have gotten so much better to be able to help interpret what you mean when you ask for something. I'm going to look at some specific methodology for that, though there are many different methodologies you could be using for prompt engineering. Context engineering. So these are the components that you're going to continually refer to that you ask for stuff on top of. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those context files can be. That's one layer of what you're querying, asking questions, asking for results from. Knowledge engineering is a deeper level than that, right? So that is essentially how you're structuring your institutional knowledge across multiple departments, multiple functions, and that is not the same as every working document you've ever had. It does have to do with information architecture. We're not getting into that today. So we're not doing knowledge engineering today. Just know that that's sort of the place and the level of depth and complexity. You use these things for different purposes, but interrelated. And then agents. So we've all heard a lot of buzz about agents. Here we're talking about agents that you create. We're not talking about things you create with OpenClaw or autonomous agents that are doing really complex stuff and learning at the same time. We are setting you up to be your stack of one, right? Okay, so an analogy for this is your pantry and your kitchen. Our pantry is actually in our basement. And so I get to have a little workout every time I need a canned good, right? But so your pantry is all of the ingredients that you could use, right? So that is the biggest level of complexity and depth. That has to be structured very specifically. Do you need to have your knowledge engineering layer set in order to use context files? No. We're starting today with a context file. So we're assuming you already have the ingredients that you need to bake that loaf of bread, right? You have your simple ingredients on the table in front of you. Prompt engineering is, of course, the recipe. It's saying sort of step by step, or what are the instructions, right, for what you're getting out of that. And then your agent would be your assistant working alongside you, and maybe you can actually just leave the kitchen and your assistant chef can actually, make the bread for you, bake the bread. Fantastic. Much like any sort of assistant, agents are super, super smart, lacking in full context, full knowledge, full depth. And so you, as the chef, you're going to need to continually correct your assistant, right? Continually improve the quality of the ingredients they get, the clarity of the instructions or recipes that they get. All right. So tokens. Okay, so this is important, especially if you're using Claude right now. You'll probably notice that things slow down at one point, right? Same is true in any, if you're using Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever. If you're having too much stuff in a single conversation, you probably already know what I'm going to say, right? You've noticed that answers get a little odd. It takes a little bit more time. It like veers from the truth that you've previously provided it with. That means that your context window is getting too long, right? So the amount that you want that AI agent to do for you, or a single set of activities, you have to keep that as concise as possible. Tokens are, it's sort of fun. I always think of it as like those little gold coins that you get when you're playing an old-fashioned video game. But they are how much sort of each component costs to process. It's like part of a word. In a lot of cases, it's a single word that's a token. It can be like an ing. An ing can be a token. So to that end, stop saying please and thank you, even if you're concerned that our future tech overlords might think you're rude, because you're actually taking up more tokens when you do that. I have that problem. I'm continually saying please and thank you, which just burns through tokens. All right, and then the interaction is what you're doing in that context window, right? All right, so hands on keyboards, everybody. Gonna make you do something. So the first thing you're going to do is I want you to bring up any of your favorite, whatever your favorite AI tool is right now. And what you're going to do is you're going to just write a prompt. Do it right now. Write a prompt. This is the scenario. So you're working at a company. The company has identified a critical bug, and your launch is going to be delayed for 2 weeks. So what you want to do is you want to inform the company about this. So go ahead and do a prompt. And I am actually going to pause for about 30 seconds. Bring up whatever your tool is. Ask it to do this for you. How are you going to communicate with the company? Don't copy and paste this, just to reinforce. This is your own. All right, so now when you have that answer, I want you to bring up notes. Word, you can put it in Docs, you can put it in a text file, whatever you want. Just copy and paste that. You're going to use this as sort of an internal audit trail as we progress. All right, so prompt engineering, there are several different ways to do this. The most effective type of prompt includes several components. You're probably familiar with these, and if not, that's okay too. Not everybody is. You've not been left behind. There are literally 4 components, so anybody can learn this today. So you want to define the identity, so that helps point in the right direction. You want to say you are a marketing expert in Gen AI overview, inline shopping, whatever. You have an instruction, so what you want that to do, your context and your constraints. So if there's information about what you're doing that AI would find helpful, that, or also the do not do. One of my favorite do not do's is do not use the word furthermore. Like there are these tells, right? If something is written by AI. And then exemplars. So if you have an example of a previous report that you've written and you want the output to be in a similar style, you can do that. Okay, so it's the RICE framework. So we're going to set aside the prompt engineering framework. We're going to come right back to that. Text files. The purpose of a context file is to be sort of your mini central source of truth that is the reference every single time. It's so that when we go back here and you need that context, you can say, go use my brand voice. You already have a context file for your brand voice. Go use the requirements that I always put in a report. Your requirements could say, we always have an executive summary. There's an introduction. The introduction should be 3 paragraphs. Whatever those criteria are, that can be in a context file. You can also put instructions in a context file. We're not getting to that today. We're just getting to them as essentially reference files. Your standard operating procedures can go in there because then when you put an agent level on it, you put agent instructions, but it's referring to your SOPs. So if you don't have your SOPs in order, it can actually be very helpful to get all of those things in order. It can also help you analyze spreadsheets. So everyone can have access to the same enrollment numbers, or everyone can have access to the same P&L so that you can query that with multiple agents across. And then it's also like consistency, right? You don't want everything in the kitchen sink in a context file. And you want those context files broken out. Why? Because you want to be able to point at only the information you need. Otherwise, too many tokens, too long of a context window, stuff drifts, right? So this is all about targeted answers, targeted product that gets you closer to what you actually intend. All right, now I'm not telling you where to go yet. These are our instructions. Okay, so I want you to review the results of the prompt you already got, just so you all know, whatever your initial prompt was, everyone is going to get slightly different answers for this, everyone, and that's okay. What I want you to do is I have an example for you in a RICE format of a prompt. I want you to copy and paste that exactly. Don't worry, you don't have it yet. I'm going to give it to you on the next slide. Then I want you to do that same thing again, but I want you to attach a very specific context file. I'm also going to give you the context file. Don't skip ahead. Don't skip a part. So what I want to see is what the development is. So what you should have thus far is you have your prompt that you've already put in. You made this up. It's unique to you. You have the output of that. You've copied and pasted that into however you're keeping your notes. All right. Now I'm going to give you access to those files. Go here. tinyurl.com/contextnews.eu. Okay. You're going to see a bunch of files, and I want to make sure that you actually can see all of those files. So if you could give me a thumbs up in the reaction window, which is in the middle of the bottom there, that's a little smiley face. You can click on that and give me a thumbs up if you can get access to it. Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. That's great. Okay, now what you're going to do is you see the prompting exercise. Open that file, okay? This is going to give you, you'll notice that it has a RICE format here, right? So it's role, information, context, constraints, and example. Copy this sucker. Copy this and put it into whatever you were prompting before and ask it for results. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to do. Then next, what I want you to do is go to this Xylos text voice guidelines. Okay, I'll bring that up too. You're gonna, this could be slightly different depending on your whatever engine you're using. You might be able to just copy this and attach it right to your Gemini, or you might want to download this as and then upload it into whatever your engine is, right? So if you're using Gemini, you can just download it and then as a PDF or whatever, and then upload it. What you're going to do is you're going to point it this way. So you're going to use the same Rice prompt, and then you're going to say, refer to this file, Xylos text voice guidelines. Okay. So you're going to attach that. Is everybody with me, or have I jumped too far ahead? You're good. Okay, awesome. And then you're going to get a different result. So this is the third result. If you're using Gemini, for example, you can start a chat, and I'm just going to do the second part of this here. You're going to copy it, put it in your chat, and you'll get an answer, right? It's thinking it through. It's okay if you don't have Gemini. That's just mine. This is the output of it, okay? And now, then you're going to do this, and you're going to add that file, the Xylos Tech Voice Guidelines. You'll probably have to download this and upload this. And then you will put the same one in, and you'll add, do this again, using the attached. All right. And what it's going to do is use that context file, it has a tone in it. It's much more specific and a little bit different, right? And so if you look at that tone file, it's saying precision over apology, it's saying approved lexicon, and you will start to see those in your response. That's an example of how you can use one, all right? I'm gonna jump back here to our presentation. So the sort of point of this exercise is it's good, better, best, right? So you start with the basics, you add precision with the Rice framework, and then you add specificity when you add that context file. The context file could be shared across your entire organization. You have communication guidelines. Everybody needs the communication guidelines. So not Sasha's communication guidelines, they're the company's communication guidelines. Separate from that, you personally should have your own tone document for when you write things. We'll get there in one sec. We have some examples of context files, and you probably have those up, but I will put up that tiny URL again. And so we're going to use 5 of them today, right? So you would have not just have 5 in the real world. You would start with some, but like anything else, there's nothing is magic here. If you don't have 5 context files or 1,500 context files, yay, that's why you're here today, right? So what I want you to think of is these are some specific ones. So if you bring up, and I'll just drag it over here, this is an example of a brand voice and style guide. Most businesses already have something like this, right? It might not be in this exact format. Sort of leveling up from here is you would want this to be in a markdown format, but we're not getting to that today, but there's actually specific file formats that AI reads better and understands better. So we'll get into that in another one. So we have tone, words to avoid. Thank God it says synergy. Is anyone else so done with that word? Preferred sentence structure and examples. So actually in my tone document for my writing, I actually have fairly large chunks of examples. If you don't know how to describe your own writing, and I certainly did not, I put a bunch of examples into AI and I said, how would you describe this writing, right? And then I used that descriptor in the context files. Pro tip, if you don't know how to use AI, ask AI how to use AI. Double pro tip is triangulate across different models. So if you're looking at something in Gemini, take that result and poke holes in it with Claude and vice versa. You'll get a better result because much like a very, very bright intern, AI will try to please you, which can end up with a little bit odd results. All right, so you have these 5 now. What I'd like you to do is the technical specs. We had gotten questions about that before. That's essentially whatever your product is or your service is. You know, if it's just you as an individual, maybe it's consulting or coaching or whatever. But you have these 5 files now. So now we're going to look at these specifically and how they work. I have step-by-step videos for each of these. Again, level 1 here. That's what we're looking at. And we're not doing the agents on top of that. We are doing a separate week-long workshop on how to structure this stuff in a really robust way. But if you're a Gemini person, then during Claude, Copilot, and ChatGPT, make a copy for yourself of the context files and actually start filling them out. Each of the videos is only like 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm going to walk through it. But if you're Copilot, if you're doing this in Copilot, for example, you have about 5 to 10 minutes now to just drop some content in, right? The purpose of this is you walk away with something that's useful to you. Questions? Nope.
Not in the chat yet.
All right, I'm going to rock and roll then, y'all. Okay, so we're starting here with Gemini. All right, so what I want you to do is go into your Google Drive. That's where we're going to start, Google Drive. In this structure, your context files and your knowledge base live inside your files. Do you want all of your Google files to be part of your big knowledge base for knowledge engineering? No. That would be a nightmare. You would have way too many files. There would be 15 different versions of things. It would be bad. This is also where your context files are going to be, right? We're not going into a whole like series of how you're developing that structure. But for right now, just make a copy of these things and put them there, okay? And then this is gems. So if you have a gem manager, you're going to need to go to Gemini to get your gem. Not now. We're not doing that now. But that is the sort of layer that you can juice up getting the results you want. All right. And
Sasha, I think there's a little audio feedback.
For me?
Oh, no. All good. We're good now.
Okay, awesome. While I'm playing this, because this is a video and we're playing a video, I'm turning myself off of my video just to make sure that it won't roll too much. And then I'm going to sort of walk you through how to do this. So we're in Drive again. We're going to end up in projects, but we're not starting there. Remember, for navigation, your 9 box is always there on the upper right-hand side. So what you're going to do is put your files in there. I'm just going to pause. So do you see all of the files should be in a folder? Okay, you want to drop them all into a single folder. Then what you're going to do is actually just press that happy little button on the upper right. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a little overview of all of the files that you have in there. Then you're going to save it as a project. So a project, I'm just going to pause again. A project is essentially sets of documents that you're going to refer to consistently and query against. So this is like your little, think of it like your little workspace. It's not everything. It's the stuff that you're going to continually use. This is your context files. And then that is actually saved in your project. So you can always go there and bring it back up. And so what you're going to do when you're there now is you can add files specifically to it. If you want to add files in addition to that, you can get rid of files, and then you're going to use this space to query it. Now, I have a specific RICE prompt that I'm using here. It's you're acting as a professional consultant. That's your role. Here's your context. Provide a structured proposal, right? So this is an example of a prompt in RICE format. I am using those same type of context files just as applied to new state use solutions, right? And I'm asking for a formal response for an RFP, but it's using my description of the product. It's using my brand voice. It's using all of those components that I put into it. So if there's a different RFP, you can just swap out the RFP. If you need better answers, you can say, I need a more comprehensive timeline. If you need any of those components, you just query it again, right? So, and it'll ask you, do you want more of this or do you want more of that? And you can dial it up or dial it down, right? And so this is how you would create something reusable using those same context files. Now, I'm just going to pause for a minute here. Your tone, you might want to have a different tone in a proposal than you have a tone for a social media post, right? So that's where you would need two separate context files. One that you're using for social media posts, and actually that's super broad. So you would use sort of some specifics for what type of social media. And then one for if you're approaching RFPs, right? And then potentially the most important step here is that you have to do QA. Super important, right? It will do weird, incorrect things and you will have to fix it. So the human in the loop is super important. Our role as we proceed forward working with AI is increasingly on good structure, good inputs, business process, and QA. So our role as professionals is actually changing. Now we're going to take a look at how this looks in Claude. Can you give me a thumbs up if you're working in Claude or if you want to work in Claude? Yeah, I love me some Claude too. All right, so this is how we're going to set this up in Claude. And it's important to note that we are not using the co-work in Claude right now, and we are definitely not using Claude Code. We are going to start in chats. And the first thing you're going to do is create a project, right? So here I'm putting nonprofit grant proposal or grant writer. So I'm putting a sort of a role on it. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So you're going to go, you're going to upload. If you're using this individually, if you're using the paid version or across your organization, you can actually attach your, your Google Drive, your OneDrive, whatever. Those have to be set up if you're doing a business version of this, like at the administrator level. But you can certainly just do this with your own personal subscription as well. And I'm putting in here, again, exactly the same RICE prompt. So we're not even touching agents. This is tip of the iceberg. You put your files in there, and then what we're going is we're referring to the specific RFP for this, and we're going to get our answers. You're going to notice that each proposal is going to be different depending upon the model that you're using. And it could even be different within Claude, if you were using Sonnet 4.7 instead of 4.6, or if you were using Opus, they're different flavors, right? So you're going to get different results. Now, the thing that's always interesting to me about Claude is you get to see all the code, like that it's going through. And some of the engines, depending on how you have them, how you're looking at them, will actually think their way through it with you, which I always love seeing how it's thinking and sort of correcting it. AI can sometimes overcomplicate things. We're going to sort of skip to the part where it gives us the proposal here. It's thinking, and this is all real time. So this is literally, Claude took far longer to create the proposal than any of the other ones I was using. And then it will give us our proposal here. You will notice if you work with multiple models, Claude gives you something that's much more polished and pretty at the end, right? And that's like that formatting is something that to me is worth the extra 2 minutes of it coming up with it. And then again, you can download, we also have them all connected, and you can make your further edits. You can also prompt it to make further edits, right? I want more of this, I want less of that. All right, I'm just plowing forward here. We have 2 more to look at. Now in Copilot, this is where you're going to find different things. So your notebooks, right now, we're going to be using those as context files. Your library is your knowledge base. And the Office agent is your agent, okay? That's where you find things. So if you're using 365 Copilot, make sure you're in the Copilot chat area. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in all of the Copilot features and functions. All right, so this is how we're going to do it. And again, multiple ways in each of these, multiple ways for how you refer to and set this up. So this is like the simple version, creating a notebook that you're going to be able to reuse again and again to create RFPs. Into that notebook, you're going to be putting your context files. And then you're going to be right there. It shows you, it confirms how many references you have. Then you're just going to click create, and it's going to spin up your notebook, essentially. Now, you actually can create instructions above that, just sort of a modified agent, but we're just going to prompt on it. Same prompt, Rice prompt, role, instructions, content, expectation. Do you notice the tone there? McKinsey-esque analytical tone. And we're going to add that RFP file again. So the RFP is specific to this circumstance. You're putting that specific to this circumstance in as you're interacting with it, but you're keeping in your context files the stuff that you're going to need to use regularly, right? And so then here I have, this is coming out. You'll notice that it's a way in which we're going to have to copy, paste, and format this at the end. It will ask you, do you want this in a different format? Do you want this in a PowerPoint? So it's going to give you different options for outputs. I actually really liked how it came up with some of this. I thought it was a little bullet point heavy, right? So each of the models will give you things slightly differently. What I did here was I went ahead and I just copied it and I put it in a separate file so that I could then create, additional edits on it. So I went to my document, I pasted what it had thus far. There's always that fun moment in QA where you have to make sure you take out the prompts. You have to make sure you take out the prompts and the conclusions, right? Especially if you're working back and forth with folks, because they don't know if it's a tell that you haven't done your QA, essentially, or enough QA. So I asked it for a 1-sheet overview. It did that. And basically you can proceed. I do love me a good Gantt chart. So I asked for one. And you'll see that as we go, I'm building that document in Word, right? And so again, same difference. I'm going to go over here and we're going to take a look at what this timeline looks like. So it gave me a pretty decent visual here on what the timeline would look like, Gantt chart. And in one of the examples, it gave me a Gantt chart that had nonsense words on it. So you always have to check on that. If it gets closer to the end of your context file, it gets less and less precise and useful, right? All right, ChatGPT. And this is what it looks like there. So your agents are your GPTs. You're going to put your context files in those projects. So you're going to work on those. And then you could put your knowledge base in many different places here. Okay. And this is how it works in our GPT. First, you're going to create a project. So the free version of this, I think it's limited to like 5 projects or something. All of these they'll be trying to upsell you to the fully juiced version. Free advice is experiment with all of them without getting married to any of them. And do not tie your files to uploading them to everything. So you need to have sort of your source of truth, and then that source of truth needs to be put into where you're working with it. So again, here's that. You're going to put your context files right here. We're uploading them. Again, this is all of the stuff you want it to reference. Here are the 4 things or 5 things I'm putting in. And the bios is another great one. You have to have individual bios and bios of your team together. And it's loading all of those right now. It'll be under sources. So you see it has chats and sources right there in the middle of the screen here. And then you're going to put your prompt right on top of it again, right? Now, when we get to the agent layer, we're putting the RFP in as the reference document. When you get to your agent layer, you can define the role for the project in multiple projects, right? So to make sure it's pretty precise and it's reusable. But you would still be swapping out that RFP. And here it's coming up with something very similar. And we're asking for a change in the budget. It's giving us a different budget breakdown. And it will literally give you the entire proposal that you then can go and edit. All right. So I'm going to pause that. I'm asking for it to add a Gantt chart, and I want it to put all of these components into a single file, which you can always ask it to do that. There it goes. It's adding all of that into a single proposal. You can take that final proposal and go and make your edits, see what makes sense, see what doesn't make sense. You'll notice actually it's referring to those markdown files, which is fun. All right, so I cannot emphasize this enough. Quality assurance is non-negotiable, right? Because it is the difference between a tool and a liability is making sure that you have all of your things in order. All right, so I think I'm doing pretty good on time. We are going to be able to, that's like a record for me. Usually I go way over. So we are going to be able to pause in a minute and go through any questions that we have. To review this, we're really starting with those basics. So what prompt engineering is, we've all heard of that, the RICE methodology to get more specific. Now, does this mean every time you ask AI for something, you use a RICE methodology? No, right? You can still just ask for questions, but it gets you a little bit more specific there, right? Your context files, which is the things that you continually reference, and those will be at sort of multiple layers, right? In addition to whatever you're doing as an institution, as a business, as an organization, you need a version of your own personal context files for you. So we talk about that sort of like tech stack of one or professional business of one. You need that as well as what you're doing in the context of your business. And then that hands-on configuration across those four main tools, we actually use 2. So you can use multiples of these with the same context files for different purposes. We use Google and we also use Claude. All right. Okay, and then we actually do this for other folks as well. So we call it 100xing yourself, right? It used to be able to 10x yourself. Now you really can create content, create processes that make you a business of one, a department of one now. So we do have a week-long intensive coming up. We can also do full day workshops, and we do team consulting. And that is our email there if you are interested. This is the information about our week-long intensive that is upcoming. So it's the week of June 2nd. It essentially is what you just experienced, but on steroids. So it's for 8 people, and we're going to literally go through for every single person, setting up your basic structure for knowledge engineering. Instead of, these basic 5 context files, we'll be going across 25, 30, 35, 50 context files, as much as we can possibly get through, and then also building agents on top of those. So what consistent agents look like, what should be in a context file versus an agent instruction, and how you should think about your business this way, right? In terms of agent employees, in terms of how you're going to think of roles, how you're going to implement skills across different platforms, and also even just how some of those platforms can interact with you, right? Like the add-ons, the extensions that you have in Chrome, or what permissions you need to give Claude so it can actually navigate and do work for you, right? And then how to get to quality outputs for big projects without those context windows exploding and giving you really odd answers. And then that comes along with a micro credential that we have, so focused on also project management, AI, and leadership. So that is coming up. We also have our Founding 50, which I'm very excited about. So if this was helpful to you, come back to us and consider getting more in depth with that. And we are going to be sharing the code for a micro course. So come in and check out what our micro courses are, and open for questions. Oh, and sneak preview. I guess it's not a preview. This is the heads up. We have something really exciting dropping in about a month. So stay tuned for that. That was a really broad teaser. It has to do with becoming a power worker. So I'll stop there.
Sasha, I was able to drop the link for our complimentary micro course in the chat. I just verified again, the discount code is working, so feel free to jump in and continue your learning with us at New State U. We really, really value you joining us live today, so thank you for that. And if there are questions, which I'm not seeing any just yet, please feel free to drop them in before we conclude the call.
And we will, again, get you out these files. We're not going to leave them out in space in perpetuity. So, thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. So please make a copy of these for yourself. Feel free to send them along to your teams too. I mean, it's the more the merrier. Go ahead and use those. And then we're also doing, we're doing a free workshop that is a little bit more basic than this. That's more about, okay, what are the models? Let's take a look at them. Let's experiment with them. And let's get to a real place of confidence in prompt engineering. So we're doing another workshop that's just a little bit more towards the content that we had at the front and taking a little bit more time. When is that, Charlotte?
That's going to be the last week of May.
That's going to be the last week of May. And if you signed up and you're on our list, you'll get information about that anyways. Awesome. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. All right. Well, if there are no questions, please enjoy the rest of your day. You have access to us, so feel free to email us with any other questions you might have, and go forth and be wonderful. Bye, y'all.